They said he'd never let anyone touch him. One accidental collision changed everything. This is the story of how a simple translator became the only weakness of Seoul's most dangerous man. The brass elevator doors parted with a hushed chime. Naledi stepped onto the gleaming marble floor of the Hwang Corporation Tower, her portfolio gripped tightly against her side. She didn't technically need it. Her credentials were already impressive enough. Setswana, Zulu, English, Mandarin, Japanese. She moved between languages the way most people breathed. Effortless, natural, flawless. Today, she was here for what could either be the opportunity of her lifetime or the worst mistake she'd ever make. Word in Seoul's underground circles whispered that Hwang Jae-sung, the enigmatic head of one of Korea's most powerful crime syndicates, required a personal interpreter. The rumors painted him as untouchable, a man who recoiled from human contact as if it carried poison. Even his own soldiers maintained careful distance, bowing from across rooms rather than risk proximity. The compensation was staggering. Life-changing money. But the risk matched it note for note. Jae-sung wasn't simply a businessman operating in gray areas. He was Seoul's most dangerous man, the shadow king of an empire built on blood and calculated violence. Her pulse hammered against her ribs as she navigated the corridor. This wasn't some corporate interview with prepared questions and polite smiles. The syndicate boss himself would be evaluating her. She drew a steadying breath, muttering under her breath in Setswana, "Wena okona seno, Naledi." Just walk in there and prove nobody does this better than you. But as she rounded the corner, mind occupied with mental preparation, she failed to notice the figure moving swiftly in her direction. Her heel caught on the edge of an ornate rug. The world tilted. Her portfolio strap slipped, papers scattering as she pitched forward, arms flailing, her palm connected with something solid, warm, unyielding as stone. Her eyes snapped upward, and everything seemed to stop. The man she'd collided with wasn't just anyone. Razor-sharp features, eyes that could dissect you with a glance. His presence didn't just fill space, it commanded it, bending the air around him until lesser beings felt the instinct to retreat. Her hand still pressed against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat beneath the expensive fabric, steady and unhurried despite the moment. Then she noticed the absolute silence that had descended. 2 guards at the corridor's end had gone rigid, hands drifting toward concealed weapons as if preparing to eliminate a threat. Horror crashed over her in waves as realization crystallized. Hwang Jae-sung, the syndicate boss, the man nobody touched, ever. If you're already hooked, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story is about to take you on a journey you won't forget. Trust me, you'll want to see where this goes. Now, back to Naledi's nightmare. His gaze lowered slowly to where her hand rested against his suit, then rose to meet her eyes. They were glacial, unreadable, like looking into the depths of a frozen lake. Naledi jerked her hand back as though his chest had burned her, voice emerging as barely more than a whisper. "Forgive me, I didn't see you, sir." Her mind screamed at her. "You absolute fool, Naledi. You're finished." The man before her stood impossibly tall, encased in a midnight black suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. His expression remained frozen, his eyes dark and lethal. She had touched him, the one unforgivable transgression. Naledi's hand withdrew instantly, but the damage was already catastrophic. The corridor's oppressive silence was shattered by his voice, low and deadly. "Who are you?" It wasn't a question. It was an interrogation wrapped in silk. Naledi forced her trembling lips to form words. "I'm here for the interpreter position." His eyes narrowed fractionally. "You touch me and still expect employment?" Something reckless stirred in her chest, pushing past the fear. A slight curve touched her mouth despite the terror crawling up her spine. "What if I'm the finest interpreter you'll find today?" The faintest flicker crossed his features, irritation mixing with something that might have been curiosity. He moved closer, his voice sharp as a blade. "We shall determine that." Hours dissolved into a parade of candidates. 50 hopefuls filed through the grand conference hall, each one tested, each one found wanting men and women from every corner of the globe. Their accents wavered, their tones carried stiffness, their delivery lacked the precision he demanded. None satisfied him. Naledi was called last. When she spoke, her voice emerged calm and assured. She transitioned from English to Mandarin, from Japanese to Setswana, weaving languages like silk threads in a tapestry. Her pronunciation was immaculate, her intonation natural as breathing. Even his guards exchanged meaningful glances. "Nobody matches her skill level, sir," one admitted quietly, unable to mask his admiration. Naledi turned to Jae-sung, her eyes steady, lips curving into a knowing expression. "I did mention it, sir. I don't believe anyone here translates better than I do." For an extended moment, he said nothing. His jaw tightened, the memory of her hand against his chest flashing through his mind like lightning. Every instinct screamed to reject her, but he needed her. Business demanded it. Finally, he spoke. "You're hired." His tone remained cold, clipped, surgical. "But understand this clearly." He leaned in slightly, his gaze sharp enough to slice through steel. "If you ever make physical contact with me again, regardless of circumstance, you're terminated immediately. Your responsibilities include traveling internationally with me to interpret, no questions, no hesitation." Naledi's heart raced, but her smile widened in victory. "Understood completely." Jae-sung turned away, dismissing her with the gesture, "Begin Monday." She exhaled relief she hadn't realized she'd been holding, barely containing her excitement. This was everything. The compensation was extraordinary, the position prestigious beyond measure. The black sedan stopped before the towering Hwang Corporation headquarters. Naledi emerged, adjusting her blazer with hands that wouldn't quite steady. She had replayed last week's events endlessly in her mind. The accidental touch, the interview, the frigid warning from Hwang Jae-sung. This was her first official day. The glass doors slid open, swallowing her into a world where silence carried weight, and every suit concealed a weapon. Eyes tracked her progress across the marble expanse, her heels clicking like metronomes against the vast emptiness. At the staircase's summit stood Jae-sung. Immaculate black suit, dark hair swept precisely. His gaze locked on her, sharp and impenetrable. Naledi's breath caught, but she refused to look away. "Bring her in," he said, voice low but carrying authority that made the guards obey instantly. Naledi had anticipated an office. Instead, she was led into a grand conference room where two foreign businessmen sat. One Italian, one French. Jae-sung occupied the table's head, an untouched whiskey glass before him. "You're early," he observed coolly, eyes flicking to her. "Excellent. Then we can immediately test her capabilities." Her brows knitted. "Test?" Jae-sung leaned back, folding his arms. "Translate for them. Every word. No errors permitted." Naledi's throat went dry. She steadied herself, stepping forward as the Italian man began speaking. His tone was slick, overconfident. Naledi listened carefully, then froze. He wasn't just discussing shipments. He was manipulating numbers, deliberately inflating quantities. She glanced at Jae-sung. He watched her, cold and calculating. Was this a trap? Naledi swallowed her fear and translated with precision. "He claims the shipment contains 30 crates, but in reality, he's attempting to misrepresent them as 50. He's lying to you." The room fell silent. The Italian stiffened. "What?" Naledi's heart hammered. She had overstepped. Perhaps she had just signed her own death warrant. But Jae-sung's lips curved, not into a smile, but something sharper. Amusement. Intrigue. His gaze pinned the Italian man like a knife through paper. "You dare deceive me in my own territory?" Within seconds, guards seized the man, dragging him out as he screamed protests. Naledi's stomach churned, but she kept her head high. When the door shut, Jae-sung's eyes returned to her. "Well done." Naledi straightened. "I was hired to translate truth." That was the truth. When the meeting concluded, Naledi gathered her notes, hands trembling now that immediate danger had passed. As she turned, her heel caught on a chair leg. Papers flew from her arms, scattering across the polished floor. She gasped, stumbling forward. Then it happened. Jae-sung's hand shot out instinctively, stopping just short of her wrist. His fingers hovered in the air, trembling as though even the thought of contact burned him. For the briefest second, his mask slipped, something raw flickered in his eyes. But then, as if awakening from a nightmare, he jerked his hand back and stood abruptly. "You fool, Naledi," her inner voice warned sharply. "You need to stop being so clumsy around him." Naledi froze, breathless, papers still scattered at her feet. The men in the room exchanged uncomfortable looks. That evening, Jae-sung summoned her to his office. The room was dim, city lights spilling through tall windows. He didn't look at her initially, only poured himself a drink, swirling the amber liquid thoughtfully. Finally, he spoke, voice low and edged with steel. "Listen carefully, Naledi. You may excel at your position. You may even be the best. But you're uncoordinated and dangerously clumsy, address that." He turned, his gaze locking onto hers. "If you ever lay those hands on me again, regardless of accident, you're gone. Do you comprehend?" Naledi lifted her chin, her heartbeat loud in her ears. "Yes, sir, I apologize sincerely. I'll work on that." Naledi sat cross-legged on her small apartment floor, hair products spread around her like treasures. A silk scarf lay nearby as she carefully sectioned her thick hair, applying oil with practiced hands. Her laptop was propped on the coffee table, glowing with the familiar faces of her family on a group video call. Her mother sat proudly in her favorite wrapper. Her father's reading glasses perched low on his nose. Her younger brother sprawled across his bed with a bag of chips in hand. "Naledi," her mother beamed. "Ah, look at my daughter glowing. This new position is treating you well. I can see it in your face." Naledi chuckled. "Mama, it's just coconut oil and shea butter." Her father leaned closer to the camera until only his forehead filled the screen. "So, tell us about this new employer of yours. What kind of man is he?" Naledi twisted another section of hair, rolling her eyes. "He barely speaks, extremely strict. Calling him cold would be an understatement, and he absolutely refuses physical contact with anyone, not even an accidental handshake." Her brother burst out laughing, nearly choking on his chips. "So, if you trip and fall on him, that's it? Game over? You're fired?" "Precisely. I almost lost this job once already." Naledi snorted. Her mother clapped her hands. "Ah, God forbid. What kind of human being rejects touch? Even our Lord touched people when he healed them." "Mama!" Naledi laughed, nearly dropping the comb. Her father shook his head, voice turning serious. "Men who fear touch fear the world, my daughter. Be careful. Sometimes what people hide from reveals more than what they show." Naledi's hands stilled for a moment on her hair. Her father's words always carried weight. Though she laughed with her brother's teasing, a small thought lodged itself in her mind. What exactly was her boss, Jae-sung, hiding from? He was dangerous, after all, Seoul's biggest syndicate lord. The airport hummed with activity the next morning. Naledi wheeled her suitcase across Incheon Airport's polished floors, her fresh twists bouncing as she hurried to maintain pace. Behind her, a silent wall of bodyguards followed Jae-sung, who walked ahead in his immaculate black suit as if he owned the entire terminal. Naledi jogged slightly to keep up. "Do you ever walk at a normal human pace?" she muttered under her breath. Jae-sung's sharp eyes slid to her. What was that? "Nothing, sir," she said quickly, gripping her passport. At the VIP checkpoint, the officer extended his hand. "Random security check passports, please." Naledi handed hers over smoothly, but when Jae-sung extended his, the officer's eyes widened at the name. Recognition flashed. Fear followed. Still, duty demanded protocol. "I need to conduct a pat-down search, sir." The air froze. Guards shifted, hands moving toward concealed weapons. The officer swallowed hard, clearly regretting his words. Naledi's heart raced. This could turn bloody within seconds. She stepped forward with a bright, nervous smile. "Oh, it's a cultural matter," she lied quickly in Korean. "My employer doesn't permit physical touch. Strict tradition, very offensive in his family, but you can see our clearances are in order, correct?" The officer hesitated, sweat forming on his forehead under Jae-sung's deadly stare. Finally, he stamped the passports and waved them through. Naledi exhaled relief, clutching her suitcase handle tightly. "You think you can speak for me?" Jae-sung's voice was soft, dangerous. Naledi lifted her chin. "Would you prefer your men open fire in an international airport?" You're welcome. His lips twitched almost imperceptibly, not quite a smile, but not ice either. Careful, Naledi. That mouth of yours will land you in trouble one day. She rolled her eyes when he turned away, or save your life. For the first time, she thought she saw it, his shoulders shaking slightly, almost as if he was suppressing laughter. The business deal had been sealed hours earlier in a sleek, smoke-filled lounge tucked into the heart of another city. Naledi had worked flawlessly, her translations weaving French, Italian, and Mandarin like silk threads in a tapestry. The foreign businessmen had been impressed beyond measure. Contracts were signed, hands shaken. As glasses clinked and congratulations circled the table, Jae-sung's partner, a broad man with a booming laugh, leaned in. "Tonight we celebrate properly," he declared. "No excuses. You and your people will stay." Jae-sung's jaw tightened. He despised detours from plans, but refusing would risk offending a valuable ally. With a curt nod, he agreed. The party began as night fell. The lounge transformed after dark. Music pulsed through velvet-lined walls, lights shifting in seductive shades of crimson and gold. Waiters glided through the crowd with trays of champagne. Women dressed in glittering gowns hovered close, laughing too sweetly, leaning too near. Jae-sung sat at a private table downstairs, his presence like a dark flame drawing moths. Beautiful women crowded around him, each trying to capture his attention, but his eyes remained cold, his glass untouched. To him, their perfume was suffocating. They dared not touch him, only sat close, hoping he would succumb. They were intolerable. He dismissed them with single glances, each rejection sharper than a blade. Naledi had slipped away upstairs where the music was louder, freer. She wore a short emerald dress that hugged her curves and shimmered under shifting lights. Her hair framed her face perfectly, her lips glossy as she held a wineglass in one hand. Unlike the women downstairs, Naledi wasn't trying to be noticed. She simply was. She danced by herself, hips swaying to the rhythm, movements playful and effortless. Men approached her one after another, drawn by her magnetic energy. But each time she shook her head, waved them away with a smile, and kept moving. "No, thank you," she laughed at one bold man who tried again. "I'm quite enjoying myself alone." She wasn't desperate. She wasn't pretending. She was alive, untouchable in her joy. From below, Jae-sung's eyes found her. He hadn't meant to look, hadn't meant to care. But there she was. A flash of smooth legs, the gleam of her smile, the freedom in her laughter. While the women beside him leaned in with rehearsed seduction, Naledi danced alone, needing no one. For the first time in years, something stirred in his chest, something dangerous. He told himself it was irritation, that she was drawing attention, being reckless, but as his gaze lingered, his hand tightened around the untouched glass. Why did she look happier without him than she ever did near him? Naledi spun, raising her glass with a grin. Her gaze collided with his across the distance. "I hope you're having a wonderful time, sir," she shouted happily, waving at him. Jae-sung sat in shadow, still as stone. The women around him blurred into nothing. It was just the two of them across the room, across two different worlds. Her smile faltered, then curved into something softer, almost teasing. She lifted her glass slightly, as if to say cheers. Jae-sung's jaw clenched, his chest burned. Then he looked away. The night grew heavier with music, the bass pounding through the walls of the luxurious lounge. Naledi's laughter rang above it all as she drained yet another glass of wine. Her cheeks flushed, her eyes sparkled, and her steps lost their steady rhythm. She was drunk. At first, it was harmless, her dance playful, her hair loose, her smile brighter than the neon lights overhead. But soon, shadows stirred in the crowd. Men who had been watching from the corners now moved closer, eyes glinting with intent. One bold stranger stepped forward, his hand reaching for her waist. "Beautiful girl, dance with me." Naledi blinked at him, swaying. Then, without warning, she drove her heel into his groin. He crumpled with a groan, clutching himself as laughter rippled through the watching crowd. Another man, larger and quicker, saw his opportunity. He grabbed her from behind, an arm locking tight around her waist. "Stop fighting, sweetheart," he hissed. Naledi twisted, fury flashing through her drunken haze. Her palm whipped across his face in a sharp slap. He snarled, rage twisting his features, and raised his hand to strike her back, only to freeze mid-motion. A steel grip had caught his wrist in mid-air. Jae-sung, his dark eyes burned with silent fury. Without a word, his fist crashed into the man's jaw, sending him sprawling. His men appeared instantly, dragging both attackers away like garbage. The music kept thundering, but for Naledi, the world had gone quiet. She tilted her head up at him, her lips curving into a drunken smile. "Thank you." Jae-sung's jaw tightened. "Are you intoxicated?" Naledi giggled, swaying. "Perhaps." Then her knees buckled. She staggered forward, nearly hitting the floor. Jae-sung caught her arm sharply, holding her upright. His voice was low, dangerous. "Control yourself unless you want immediate termination." Naledi leaned closer, her face only inches from his. Her words tumbled out with a laugh. "You can't fire me. You need me. You can't manage this alone. I'm the best translator you'll ever find." Her giggles echoed as she nearly fell again. With a curse under his breath, Jae-sung's arms slid around her, lifting her effortlessly against his chest. His body tensed at the unwanted contact, but he had no choice. "Where's her room?" He snapped at one of his men as he strode out of the lounge. The guard bowed quickly. "Sir, there isn't one available yet. The hotel is fully booked. Wasn't she supposed to have a room prepared as your translator?" "I gave explicit instructions." Another man in a suit bowed his head apologetically. "I'll investigate immediately, sir." Jae-sung's jaw clenched. Against every instinct, against every rule he had made for himself, he carried her to his own suite. Inside, the lights were dim, the air heavy with silence. He laid her gently on the edge of his king-sized bed, pulling the sheets over her carefully. He turned to leave, but then her fingers wrapped weakly around his wrist. "Don't leave." The words were slurred, soft, childlike, yet her touch seared through him like fire. His muscles tensed, irritation surging. He had already violated his own rules by carrying her. Now this. He pulled free, stepping toward the door. "Go," she mumbled, eyes half shut, "and I'll come find you myself." He froze, turned. For a long second, silence pressed between them. Then with a sharp exhale, Jae-sung returned and lowered himself into the chair beside the bed. Naledi rolled toward him, her voice a soft babble of drunken sweetness. "You're not actually that frightening, you know, cold, absolutely. But frightening? Not to me." Her sleepy eyes searched his face. She sat up slowly, unsteady, swaying toward him, too close. Her warmth invaded his space. He pushed her back firmly. "Stay still." "I can't," she whispered, her lips curving. She leaned forward again, her breath warm against his skin. Before he could move, her lips brushed his. Soft, fleeting, unexpected. Jae-sung's eyes widened. Shock, heat, and something dangerous flashed across his face, but Naledi didn't notice. She had already collapsed against him, her head falling onto his shoulder, her breathing slow and steady in sleep. Jae-sung sat frozen, her weight warm against him, her lips' imprint still burning on his own. For the first time in years, the untouchable Syndicate lord felt his walls crack. The sharp ache in Naledi's head was the first thing she registered. Her eyes fluttered open to an unfamiliar ceiling, and slowly the memory of last night's drunken blur hit her like a storm. She gasped, sitting up suddenly, her dress wrinkled, hair tousled. "Oh God, did I really dance like that? Did I really kick that man? Did I?" Her cheeks burned hot. "I must have made a complete fool of myself." She couldn't remember the kiss clearly. She covered her face with both palms, groaning softly. "Please tell me he didn't witness everything. Please tell me I didn't humiliate myself in front of him." But before her silent prayers could finish, a deep voice cut through the silence. "Get up now. I know you're awake." Her heart sank. Slowly, she peeked through her fingers. There he was. Jae-sung, standing near the window, arms folded across his chest, his sharp eyes fixed on her. Naledi scrambled to her feet, still covering her face with one hand as though it could hide her shame. "Sir, I—" she stammered, her voice tiny. Jae-sung's jaw tightened. "With your reckless behavior and careless drinking yesterday, you are terminated." The word hit her harder than the hangover. Instantly, her hand dropped from her face, her eyes widening in shock. "No, please. Sir, I promise it won't happen again. I'll be more professional. I'll—" He cut her off, his voice sharp and unforgiving. "This is not a playground. You should be able to distinguish professional responsibilities from personal entertainment." Naledi's eyes watered as she rushed forward, shaking her head. "No, please don't do this. This position means everything to me. I can improve. I will improve. Just don't terminate me." Jae-sung's expression didn't soften. If anything, it grew colder. "Your final compensation will be wired to your account. That's the last communication you'll receive from me." Her knees buckled, but she steadied herself, desperation painting her every word. "Please, Mr. Hwang, just one more opportunity. Don't decide like this." But he had already turned his back to her, striding toward the door. Without a glance, he left, the sound of the door clicking shut echoing louder than her pounding heartbeat. Naledi stood frozen, tears threatening to spill. Her lips trembled as she whispered into the emptiness. "Naledi, you fool. What are you going to do now?" Naledi sat on the hotel bed long after Jae-sung left, her mind spinning. Her chest felt heavy, as if the world had collapsed, terminated. Just like that. No discussion, no second chance. She buried her face in her hands. "What do I tell Mama now? What do I tell Papa? Oh Lord, I can't return home with nothing." She forced herself to pack her things and leave the hotel quietly. Her head throbbed with every step, but her heart ached even worse. Meanwhile, Jae-sung was in a private lounge with his men. His business partners had requested another round of discussions that morning. A delicate negotiation with a French syndicate who didn't speak Korean. "Sir," one of his lieutenants muttered, lowering his voice. "We have no translator. None of us speak fluent French. If we mishandle this, the entire deal collapses." Jae-sung's eyes narrowed. He hated admitting it, but he knew the truth. Naledi was the only one skilled enough to handle such complex negotiations. "She's reckless," he said flatly. "I don't want her anywhere near me again." "Yes, sir, but she's the best," the man insisted. "We cannot afford mistakes. She might be the only one who can secure this deal." Jae-sung's jaw flexed. He hated being cornered, hated even more that the very woman who had embarrassed herself last night was also the woman he needed most. Naledi, meanwhile, was dragging her suitcase through the hotel lobby when two men in sharp suits blocked her path. "Miss Naledi?" one asked with a heavy accent. She blinked. "Yes." "The French delegation requests your assistance in the meeting. They said only you can interpret accurately." Her heart skipped. "What? Me?" Before she could respond, Jae-sung himself appeared, his cold eyes locking on hers. For a moment, the entire lobby seemed to freeze. He walked closer, his voice low but commanding. "You're coming with me right now." Naledi clutched her suitcase, hesitation flooding her. "But you terminated me." His gaze hardened. "This isn't about what I want. It's about what I need." She swallowed nervously, her mind racing. He needed her. He admitted it without saying it outright. A small smile tugged at her lips despite her nerves. "So, does this mean I still have my position?" Jae-sung glared at her, his voice clipped. "Don't test your luck, Naledi. Complete this job and we'll discuss it later." He turned on his heel. Though he never looked back, Naledi followed him, dragging her suitcase, her heart pounding with a dangerous mix of relief, curiosity, and excitement. The French meeting concluded smoothly, thanks to Naledi's flawless translation. The deal was signed, the syndicate satisfied, and Jae-sung's men relieved. But for Naledi, the real meeting was only just beginning. She stood before Jae-sung in his suite, her suitcase still by her side, her eyes soft and pleading. "Sir," she began carefully. He didn't look at her initially, just flipped through some files. "You performed well today, but don't think I've forgotten last night." Naledi bit her lip and stepped closer. I'm begging you. Give me one final chance. I won't drink again. I won't dance. I won't even smile if it means keeping this position. Finally, his dark eyes met hers, sharp as knives. One mistake, Naledi. Just one more and you're gone permanently. She placed her hand over her chest and nodded quickly. I promise. No mistakes. I'll make you proud. His gaze lingered on her, unreadable. Then he turned away. We'll see. Jae-sung worked from home that night, his desk covered in contracts and reports, but his mind refused to stay on the numbers. Every time he tried to focus, he saw her face, her laugh, her drunken sweetness, and her lips. He leaned back in his chair, pressing his fingers against his temples, frustrated with himself. Why am I even thinking about this? He muttered. But the memory of her lips pressing against his, soft, warm, unexpected, replayed until his chest tightened. It was just an accident. She was intoxicated. It meant nothing. So why did it feel like it meant something? Why couldn't he stop thinking about how she drunkenly kissed him? The next morning, Naledi arrived early at the office. Her usual bright smile dimmed into professional composure. She greeted him politely and began arranging the day's documents. Naledi, Jae-sung's voice called, low and commanding. She straightened immediately. Yes, sir? Come closer. She obeyed, walking to his desk. His sharp eyes scanned her face, but this time they didn't stop there. They lowered, settling on her lips. He had seen many women in his life, but none had lips like hers. Soft, full, almost dangerous. Before he could stop himself, his hand lifted. His fingers brushed lightly against her cheek, then drifted down until his fingertip grazed her lips. Naledi froze, her wide eyes searching his face. Sir? For a moment, he was no longer Hwang Jae-sung, the feared Syndicate lord. He was just a man caught off guard by a woman. Naledi took a step back, confusion written all over her face. Are you all right? The spell broke. His hand dropped. His jaw clenched, trying to mask what he had just done. Before either could say more, Naledi's phone buzzed again and again. She glanced at the screen and sighed. Why don't you answer it? Jae-sung asked, his tone sharper than intended. It's my boyfriend, she said softly, silencing the call. I'll return his call after work. Something shifted in his eyes, as though her words were a physical blow, boyfriend. His voice was low, controlled, but dangerous. Why didn't you disclose that you were in a relationship? Naledi blinked, caught off guard. I didn't think it was necessary, sir. It has nothing to do with my work. She smiled faintly, though inside she was unsettled by his sudden questions, and even more unsettled by the way he had touched her lips. That evening, as Naledi prepared to leave, her boyfriend arrived to pick her up. A tall, handsome Korean man, dressed neatly, with gentle eyes that lit up when he saw her. Naledi, he called warmly, striding forward. He leaned in, kissing her cheek tenderly before taking her bag. Then, with perfect manners, he opened the car door for her. From the top floor, Jae-sung stood by his window, watching. The sight pierced him in a way he didn't understand, or didn't want to. His chest tightened, his fists clenched. A foreign sting burned inside him. Could it be jealousy? He turned away sharply, muttering under his breath, Why do I even care? The thud of fists against leather echoed in the dimly lit gym. Jae-sung's body glistened with sweat, each movement sharp, precise, brutal. His tattoo stretched across his shoulder and down his arm, the ink dancing with every ripple of muscle as he jabbed, ducked, and swung again. But no matter how many times his fists connected with the heavy bag, he couldn't shake the image haunting him all weekend. Naledi, her lips curving into a playful smile. The warmth in her eyes when she translated his words with a hint of sass, and worst of all, the way that man, her so-called boyfriend, had dared to press a kiss to her cheek. His chest tightened, irritation surged through him. With a growl, he slammed his fist into the bag harder, the chains rattling violently from the impact. Pathetic, he muttered under his breath, sweat dripping down his temple. I don't do weakness. Yet that was exactly what she made him. Vulnerable. He hated it. Hated how his thoughts drifted to her when he should have been focused on business, on strategy, on survival. Every punch he threw was a vow, a promise to himself. He would crush this distraction. He would rip Naledi out of his mind the way he would eliminate a rival. Women are dangerous, he reminded himself, jaw clenching as he landed another blow. They cloud your judgment, they break your focus, and in my world, losing focus means death. He paused, breathing heavily, his knuckles raw against the wrapped fabric. Closing his eyes, he forced a long inhale, summoning the coldness that always kept him in control. "No more," he hissed, his voice echoing in the empty gym. "This ends now. I am Hwang Jae-sung. I don't bend. I don't break. I don't fall for anyone." But even as he spoke the words, Naledi's laughter, soft, teasing, unforgettable, echoed in his mind, mocking him, his fury ignited again. With a roar, he drove his fist into the bag, the sound reverberating like thunder. It didn't matter, he would bury this weakness. He had to, because the one thing Jae-sung hated more than his enemies was being vulnerable to a woman Monday arrived with organized chaos. The Syndicate's headquarters buzzed with activity. Men and women in dark suits hurried across the marble lobby. Phones rang constantly. Orders flew left and right. Deals were being finalized. Deliveries tracked. Meetings scheduled. At the center of it all sat Jae-sung, sharp in a tailored black suit, his expression cold and unyielding. His presence commanded silence whenever he walked past, the weight of his authority pressing down on everyone. Naledi, however, seemed unaffected. She moved at his side, her notebook in hand, jotting translations and notes with calm precision. She had learned quickly how his empire functioned: fast, brutal, efficient. "Keep pace," Jae-sung said sternly, his tone clipped as his eyes scanned a file. "I am keeping pace," Naledi replied smoothly, arching a brow. "It's not my fault you have multiple different moods before lunch. Cold, colder, and absolutely freezing." Her lips curved into a playful smirk. "Honestly, working with you feels like riding a roller coaster blindfolded." The room stilled for a second. A few men dared to glance at her, their eyes wide in disbelief. No one spoke to their boss that way. Jae-sung's jaw tightened. For a moment, it looked like he might snap back. Instead, he closed the file with deliberate calm. "What did you say?" He walked toward her. "Nothing, sir." Naledi swallowed hard. She only shook her head, muttering under her breath, "Multiple moods in a single day. He really should consult a physician." But her sass stayed with him. It followed him through every meeting, clung to his thoughts like smoke, and it ignited something dangerous, the exact opposite of what he wanted to feel. An hour later, Naledi stood by the desk, reading aloud the translation of a contract, her tone sharp as always. Article 4. Late delivery incurs a 20% penalty. Article 5. Supplier assumes full responsibility if goods go missing. In other words, you trust absolutely no one. No wonder you intimidate people. You change moods faster than the weather. Jae-sung's eyes lifted, dark and unamused. "Read it properly." "I am," she teased. "You just don't like hearing the truth." In a sudden motion, he rose, closing the distance until her back brushed the desk, one hand pressed against the surface beside her, caging her in. "You talk too much," he growled. Her eyes sparked. "And I think you glare too much, sir." He said nothing. He just stared at her. Bold, beautiful eyes, his gaze locked on her full lips, his chest rising and falling as though he were waging war with himself. And then, without warning, he leaned in. Their mouths collided in a fierce, consuming kiss. Naledi gasped, her notebook slipping from her hands as his strong arms wrapped around her, pulling her against him. His lips were hot, desperate, demanding. And for a man who hated touch, Jae-sung craved her as though she were oxygen. He kissed her once, twice, then deeper, his mouth moving against hers with urgency, with hunger, with a tenderness buried beneath fire. For a moment, Naledi melted, her fingers curling into his suit jacket, her body betraying her. The taste of him, the strength in his hold, it was intoxicating, but reality slammed into her chest. She shoved him back, her eyes wide with shock and anger. "What the hell was that for?" she demanded, her voice trembling. I have a boyfriend, Mr. Hwang. His dark gaze burned into hers, unflinching. Didn't you know you had a boyfriend the night you kissed me? Naledi froze, her lips parting. What? The night you were intoxicated, he said evenly, his voice rough. You kissed me first. Her face went pale, disbelief washing over her. No, I, I don't remember that. She shook her head quickly. I'm sorry. I really can't remember. That was a mistake. Please don't do that again, sir. She gathered her things in a rush, her hands trembling as she avoided his piercing stare. Without another word, she hurried out, the door slamming shut behind her. Jae-sung stood in the silence, his breathing ragged, his lips still tingling with the taste of her. His fists clenched, frustration boiling inside him. This wasn't the plan, he muttered harshly to himself. The plan was to avoid her, to bury this weakness. But then his gaze dropped to where her notebook had fallen on the floor, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. He exhaled shakily, admitting the truth that terrified him most. With her, it's different. I want more. His chest tightened, but for the first time, Jae-sung didn't fight it. He didn't push her away in his mind. Instead, he let the thought of her consume him, knowing he was already too far gone. Naledi lay curled against Taehyun's chest, his arm draped lazily around her. He ran his fingers through her hair, massaging her scalp in slow, gentle motions. It should have felt comforting, safe, familiar. But her eyes were closed, and all she could see was Jae-sung's face. All she could feel was his lips, rough, demanding, unforgettable. Her heart gave a wild skip at the memory. No one had ever kissed her that way before, not even Taehyun. It was thrilling and terrifying all at once. Why am I thinking about him? She scolded herself. I'm with Taehyun. This isn't right. Guilt gnawed at her chest. She knew she had to be honest, to tell Taehyun what was eating at her. She drew in a breath, about to speak. Taehyun, I need to... But before she could finish, his lips pressed against her neck. His hand slid over her waist, pulling her closer. Babe, she murmured, tense. Can we not do this right now? I'm really not in the mood. She sat up, gently pushing his hand away. Taehyun frowned, but leaned forward, trying again. His hand gripped her arm tighter this time. Naledi, come on. I want you now. I can't resist you. Her stomach twisted. She pulled his hand off, firmer now. No. I said I'm not in the mood. But Taehyun didn't stop. His grip turned rough, his weight pressing her back against the bed. His fingers tugged at her blouse, forcing the buttons open. Taehyun! She gasped, panic rising in her chest. She shoved at his shoulders, but he was stronger. Stop! Stop it! He ignored her protests, his breath hot against her cheek as he tore at her clothes. Fear surged through her. Adrenaline kicked in. Naledi fought harder, thrashing beneath him until she managed to land a sharp kick to his side. Taehyun groaned, loosening his grip just enough. Without wasting another second, she scrambled up, her blouse torn, tears burning her eyes. She bolted for the door, yanking it open and stumbling into the night. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she ran, her heart pounding in her chest. Not from exertion, but from shock. Taehyun's voice echoed faintly behind her, but she didn't dare look back. All she knew was she had to get away from him. Naledi sat curled on the couch in her small sitting room, her knees drawn up to her chest. The room was dark except for the soft glow of a lamp, shadows stretching across the walls. Her chest rose and fell in uneven breaths, anger and confusion swirling inside her like a storm. How could Taehyun, her sweet, charming boyfriend of 7 months, turn into someone so unrecognizable? How could the man who used to hold her gently, whisper promises into her ear, try to force himself on her tonight? Her hands trembled as she picked up her phone. The ache in her chest was unbearable, but her resolve was sharp as glass. Her thumbs flew over the screen. Taehyun, we're finished. Don't call me. Don't text me. If you ever show up at my house or workplace again, I swear I'll involve the police. She stared at the words for a long moment, then hit send before she could second-guess herself. Her phone buzzed almost instantly, Taehyun's name lighting up the screen. She didn't even look at the message one swipe, and his number was blocked. Naledi dropped the phone beside her and buried her face in her palms, her shoulders shaking. She wasn't crying, not fully. It was something else, something fiercer. She was angry. Angry that he had betrayed her trust, angry that he had made her feel unsafe in her own skin. And yet beneath that anger, a different name pressed against her thoughts, Jae-sung. Her mind betrayed her, flashing back to the kiss in his office. The way his touch had burned, not with fear, but with something dangerously addictive. Her heart skipped, shame colliding with longing. She hated that the memory of her syndicate boss felt safer than the man she had been with for months. Naledi sat back against the couch, staring blankly at the ceiling. Everything had changed in a single night, and nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, Naledi walked into the syndicate headquarters with her usual notebook in hand, but her steps lacked their usual bounce. Her eyes were tired, her expression guarded. Though she tried to mask it with a small smile, the weight of the night before clung to her like a shadow. She sat at her desk outside Jae-sung's office, forcing herself into routine, translating, typing, pretending everything was fine, but her fingers trembled slightly each time she touched the keyboard. Jae-sung noticed through the glass wall of his office. His sharp eyes tracked her every movement. She wasn't her usual self. The Naledi who teased him, who challenged him, who filled the air with sass. Today, she was quieter. Too quiet. When he finally stepped out, the room seemed to shrink under his presence. He stopped in front of her desk, his gaze heavy. "You're late," he said flatly. Naledi looked up, startled. She opened her mouth to defend herself, then closed it. "It won't happen again," she murmured, lowering her eyes. That answer wasn't like her. Normally, she'd snap back, roll her eyes, maybe even joke about his mood swings. But now she just looked defeated. Jae-sung's jaw tightened. He leaned down, resting one hand on her desk. His voice dropped so low only she could hear, "Who hurt you?" Naledi's heart skipped. She froze, staring at him. "What are you talking about? No one." His eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me." For a moment, silence stretched between them, thick and unyielding. His gaze was piercing, as though he could peel back every layer she was trying so hard to hide. Naledi forced a shaky laugh, closing her notebook. "I said no one. You're imagining things, sir." She looked at him confusedly. "And I wonder when you started caring about such things. About me." "You are not part of such things, Naledi. As much as I hate to admit it, you're becoming too important." Jae-sung glared at her, but there was something mischievous in his eyes. Caught by surprise by his words, she didn't clearly know what they meant. But out of jealousy, the women that Jae-sung had not once looked at fixed their mean eyes on Naledi. He had said that too loudly. And she hated public proposals or confessions, even if it was from the syndicate boss himself. The evening air was cool, the streets alive with the usual hum of traffic and chatter. Naledi stood at the bus stop, her bag slung across her shoulder, waiting patiently as the crowd thinned around her. She didn't expect to see the black sedan roll up beside the curb, its tinted windows sliding down to reveal the cold, unreadable eyes of Jae-sung. "Get in," he ordered. His voice carried that familiar authority, the one that made his men obey without question. Naledi blinked. "Excuse me?" He opened the door, stepping out in his dark suit, his presence consuming the space. "I'll take you home." She crossed her arms, raising a brow. "Since when does the big bad syndicate lord play chauffeur?" His lips twitched. Not quite a smile. "Since now. And because I want to take you out." Her jaw dropped slightly. "Take me out? As in a date?" His gaze didn't waver. "Yes." Jae-sung leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on Naledi as she scribbled notes with that usual stubborn focus of hers. She wasn't his type. Too outspoken, too playful, too ordinary compared to the polished women he usually kept around. She should have been invisible to him. She was the wrong woman, the exact opposite of his type, the one he wasn't supposed to notice. But he did. Naledi stared at him, trying to make sense of it. "Is this about the kiss?" Jae-sung's silence stretched, and then he answered with a blunt honesty only he could carry. I don't like being touched. I don't like touching anyone. But with you, it's different. I find it strange, but I want to indulge in it. Naledi scoffed, throwing her hands up. That makes zero sense, sir. You want to date me because you like physical touch with me? That's your reason? His jaw tightened. Yes. She blinked, stunned, then narrowed her eyes. So what? You just want my body? That's why you're asking me out? He didn't flinch. Yes, because I don't want anyone else's, only yours. Her breath caught, not from flattery but from disbelief. That's absurd, she muttered. That's not enough reason for me to be with someone. She took a step back, shaking her head. Are you seriously asking me for some kind of friends with benefits arrangement? Jae-sung's gaze held hers, steady and unapologetic. Not really, but yes. Naledi's face hardened. No, I can't, and I don't do such things. Without waiting for his response, she turned on her heel, walking away toward the bus pulling up to the stop. Inside, her thoughts spiraled in anger. Because of physical touch. That's all he wants. What was I expecting from a syndicate lord of all people? Her chest tightened as Tae-hyun's face flashed in her mind, the man who had tried to force himself on her just the night before, and now her boss, powerful and intimidating Jae-sung, standing there asking to be with her only because he craved her body. Men are trash, she muttered under her breath, her eyes burning as she stepped onto the bus. All of them, even my syndicate boss. And though she tried to push the thought away, the memory of Jae-sung's kiss still lingered, refusing to let her go. The mop clattered against the wall as Naledi dropped it, wiping sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. Her apartment smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, but the music blasting from her speaker had kept her sane through the long hours of scrubbing and dusting. For the past 3 hours, she had been dancing more than cleaning, hips swaying to Burna Boy and Tiwa Savage. Her laughter filled the room as she twirled in the middle of her sitting room, trying to dance away the frustration and confusion of the past few weeks. Tae-hyun, Jae-sung, men, all the chaos, forget them, she muttered to herself, spinning once more, her waist rolling in rhythm, sweat glistening on her skin. Just then, her phone buzzed violently on the table. She groaned, half expecting another annoying text from Tae-hyun using an unknown number, but the name that flashed across the screen made her freeze. Hwang Jae-sung. Her breath caught. What did he want on a Saturday? She swiped to answer, hello? His deep voice thundered through the line, leaving no space for pleasantries. Riverside Villa. 15 minutes. She blinked, stunned. Sir, is there a problem? Silence. Then a curt reply. 15 minutes. The line went dead. Naledi stared at her phone, mouth half open. What the hell? She muttered. She dialed back. But of course, he didn't answer. It's the weekend, not a workday, she said aloud to herself, annoyed at the audacity of the man. But still, her hands moved quickly, grabbing a towel. She sighed heavily. Of course he wouldn't care if it's a weekend. Syndicate lords don't exactly follow HR rules. 10 minutes later, steam rose from the bathroom as she stepped out in fresh clothes, hair still damp from the shower. She caught her reflection in the mirror, pausing for a moment. What could he possibly want from me this time? She hailed a taxi and slid into the back seat, her heart racing faster than the city traffic. With each turn of the wheels toward his villa, tension built in her chest. The tall iron gates of Jae-sung's villa swung open, and Naledi stepped out of the taxi, her annoyance mounting with each step she took. She had expected chaos, an emergency, maybe even danger. Instead, when she entered the grand living room, Jae-sung was calmly seated at the long glass table, files spread before him. Without looking up, he spoke in his usual commanding tone. Translate these contracts into English and mark every clause about international shipments. I want a clean summary. Naledi's jaw dropped. She picked up one of the thick documents and scanned through it. This is for the next 3 months, she said, incredulous. It's not urgent. His eyes lifted slowly to meet hers, dark and sharp. Don't question me, just do it. Her lips parted, ready to argue, but something in his tone silenced her. She pulled out her laptop with an exaggerated sigh, plopping down in the seat opposite him. Unbelievable, she muttered under her breath. But Jae-sung wasn't really watching the documents. He was watching her. Her brows knitted in concentration, her lips pursed, the faint irritation written across her face. It amused him. She was annoyed, but even in her frustration she was captivating. A corner of his mouth twitched upward. Naledi noticed and frowned. "Why are you smiling?" "Your angry face," he replied smoothly. "You look like an adorable chipmunk." She blinked, taken aback. Did Hwang Jae-sung, the ruthless syndicate boss, just smile because of her again? This was the second time she'd seen his rare smile. Her cheeks grew warm, and she quickly looked back at the screen, hiding behind a scoff. Minutes ticked by in silence before he asked, "Have you eaten breakfast?" Her head snapped up. "Don't bother. You already stole my weekend." Ignoring her protest, he pulled out his phone, ordered something, and within 15 minutes, the villa doorbell rang. He slid a glance her way. "Go get it." She gave him a glare, but obeyed, returning with neatly packaged food. When he insisted she sit at the dining table, her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. Mortified, she pressed her hand against it, but Jae-sung only smirked. "Eat." Reluctantly, she joined him. The rich aroma filled the room, and as she took her first bite, her shoulders relaxed despite herself. "You're beautiful. You're the best at what you do," Jae-sung said suddenly, his voice low but steady. "You work hard. Too hard, I notice things, Naledi." The words landed softly, unexpectedly. She looked up at him. For a moment, the syndicate boss wasn't her terrifying employer. He was a man sitting across from her, speaking as if he saw her beyond the surface. Their eyes locked. Neither spoke. 10 seconds stretched like an eternity, the air between them heavy with something unspoken. Naledi felt her pulse quicken. She was the first to break away, clearing her throat and focusing back on her food. "You're strange. Sometimes you're hard. Sometimes you're soft. You're mysterious," she muttered. "Syndicate lords are mysterious," he said with a wink. By the time the sun began to dip, Naledi packed her things to leave. She walked to the door, but Jae-sung followed, stopping just a step behind her. When she turned to say goodbye, she found herself caught in the closeness. Their faces were only inches apart. His gaze dropped briefly to her lips, then back to her eyes. She could feel his breath, warm and steady, brushing against her skin. Neither moved, but the tension was palpable. The air seemed to hum with unspoken desire, the kind of pull that no words could explain. This was crazy. The man who had almost fired her for accidentally touching him was now the one moving so close to her. Naledi's throat went dry. She took a shaky step back, fumbling for the door handle. "Good night, sir," she whispered. Her voice softer than she intended. Jae-sung didn't reply. He only watched her, his eyes unreadable, but his clenched jaw betrayed the battle he was fighting within himself. As she slipped out the door, Naledi's heart pounded in her chest. She hadn't kissed him, but it felt like she had, and that was even more dangerous. Monday morning felt different the moment Naledi walked into the Syndicate's headquarters. Instead of heading toward her tiny corner office with peeling paint and a squeaky chair, one of Jae-sung's men stopped her. "This way, Miss Naledi," he said with a polite bow, guiding her down a polished corridor she rarely walked through. When the heavy door opened, her eyes widened. The office was spacious, airy, and breathtakingly luxurious. Soft cream walls, a wide oak desk, velvet curtains in a deep shade of burgundy. Even the shelves had been arranged neatly with books, and a fresh vase of orchids sat on the table. It looked nothing like her old space. It looked like her style. Naledi blinked. "What in the world?" The man smiled faintly. "The boss created this office for you." Her heart gave a small traitorous skip, but she quickly shook it off. Why would Jae-sung do this? Not wasting a second, she marched straight to his office. Jae-sung was seated behind his desk, crisp suit jacket draped over his shoulders, typing something on his laptop. He barely lifted his eyes when she entered. "Why did you change my office?" she asked, planting both hands on his desk. Without looking up, he answered simply, You deserve better. Naledi stared at him, stunned by the ease of his response. She walked closer, lowering her voice. If you think giving me a luxurious office will make me sleep with you, it won't work. That made him pause. He raised his head, his dark eyes locking on hers, sharp and unflinching. His jaw tightened. I could have any woman I want, Naledi, he said evenly, but I don't want them. I want you. Her breath caught, but she forced a scoff, stepping back. Right, because I'm the only one who doesn't throw herself at you. She turned toward the door. Thank you for the office. Before she could leave, his voice stopped her. Have dinner with me tonight. Naledi looked back, one brow arched. I'd prefer a club. I want to let loose tonight. The corner of his lips curved into a rare smile. You want to get drunk so you can have another opportunity to kiss me? Her cheeks heated instantly. I can't even remember that, don't remind me. Don't worry, I remember enough for both of us, he teased. Naledi crossed her arms, trying to mask her embarrassment. Well, I won't be coming. Jae-sung leaned back, eyes glinting with amusement. Relax, I'm teasing. Meet me at 9. His tone shifted to a command, not a request. She shook her head, muttering under her breath as she left, but he kept his eyes on her retreating figure. When the door closed, Jae-sung exhaled slowly, leaning back in his chair. He rarely smiled. He rarely even felt lightness, but Naledi had managed to pull it out of him. She was bringing back a side of him he thought was long gone, the side that had died with his mother. The world thought Hwang Jae-sung was untouchable, cold, impenetrable. But behind that mask lived memories he couldn't erase. He remembered being a boy no older than 7, clinging to his mother's hand in a dark hallway. She had been the only one who touched him gently, the only warmth in a home ruled by violence and fear. Jae-sung, no matter what happens, remember you're not alone, she had whispered, brushing his hair back with trembling fingers. But that was the last night he ever felt her touch. She died in a bloody crossfire meant for his father. And from then on, every hand that reached for him came with pain. He couldn't deny it anymore. Naledi made him feel alive. The club pulsed with colorful lights and deep bass. But the moment Naledi stepped in, Jae-sung forgot the noise around him. She looked different, the kind of different that turned every head in the room. Her fitted crimson dress hugged her curves. Her red lipstick glowed under the lights. Her hair framed her face like she was born to own the night. She had the gift of transformation tonight. She wasn't just Naledi, the translator. Tonight, she was the main character. Jae-sung's sharp eyes scanned the club. He noticed men turning, their gazes lingering too long, their whispers betraying admiration. His jaw tightened. She belonged with him tonight, and everyone else needed to know it. Come, he said, taking her hand. His tone left no room for argument. On the dance floor, the world slowed. The crowd blurred into shadows, the music a distant thrum. His hand found the curve of her waist, pulling her closer until there was no space between them. Her body pressed against his, warm and intoxicating. They moved slowly, each step deliberate, like they weren't dancing, but breathing each other in. Jae-sung leaned closer, his lips brushing near her ear. You smell incredible. Naledi tilted her head, smiling softly at him. Their eyes locked, breath mingling, hearts racing. He leaned in, lips hovering near hers, but she pulled back just before their mouths could meet. Jae-sung arched a brow. You're playing hard to get. Naledi smirked faintly. I don't want a man who's just after my body. His eyes darkened. I'm not. I genuinely like you, Naledi. Her smile faded into something more serious. Prove it. How? He asked, his voice low. I'll do anything you ask, he added, meaning every word. Naledi shook her head, her eyes hazy with alcohol. Don't worry, she whispered drunkenly. Jae-sung frowned. You're so lightweight. 2 shots and you're drunk. She bit her lower lip, teasing him. Isn't that attractive? His jaw clenched. Damn, it is, Naledi. Her giggle was faint, her head tilting against his chest. I feel sleepy, she murmured before her legs gave way. Jae-sung caught her instantly, cradling her as if she were something fragile. Without hesitation, he carried her out, ignoring the stairs, and drove her straight to her apartment. Inside, he laid her gently on her bed, pulling the blanket over her. He turned to leave, but her voice, soft and slurred, stopped him. "Don't go." She pushed herself up, wobbling slightly. "Are you sure?" he asked, his tone careful, his eyes searching hers. "Yes," she whispered, wrapping her arms around him and climbing into his lap with surprising boldness. She pressed soft kisses on his cheek, then lower, brushing her lips against his neck. Each kiss sent shivers racing down Jae-sung's spine, a feeling so foreign it almost scared him. "Naledi." His voice broke slightly as he placed her back down on the bed. "Are you teasing me on purpose?" "Yes," she said with disarming confidence, her fingers tracing from his abdomen up to his chest, then curling around his neck. Her lips pressed softly against his neck, then finally captured his mouth. "I'm done teasing you," she whispered against his ear, her voice sultry. She pulled away with a wicked glint in her eyes. "You can go now." She turned as if to walk away, but Jae-sung's hand shot out, gripping her wrist firmly. "Don't do that to me, Naledi." In one swift motion, he pulled her back, crashing his lips onto hers. This kiss was different. Hungry, consuming, the kind that made the world fall away. She melted into him, answering his urgency with equal fire. His hands roamed her body, hers tangled in his hair, and within moments they tumbled onto the bed, tangled in sheets, giving in to the desire they had both been fighting. That night, they crossed the line neither of them could ever return from. Morning light seeped through the curtains, painting the room in soft gold. Jae-sung sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded, watching Naledi breathe. Her lashes fluttered, lips parting in a peaceful half-smile. So different from the woman who'd barged into his life with sass and fire. For a moment, the world narrowed to the quiet rise and fall of her chest. She stirred and opened her eyes, catching him mid-watch, her cheeks heated with embarrassment. "Gosh, did you watch me sleep?" she asked, half laughing, half annoyed. "Yes," he said simply, voice low, "and I enjoyed it." "Don't flatter me," she muttered, turning her face away, but unable to hide the blush warming her neck. He reached out, gentle as if handling glass, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Naledi," he began, and when he said her name, it sounded softer than she'd ever heard it from him. "Be my woman." She blinked, startled into silence. He took a breath, the confession coming out like something he'd kept locked up for too long. "What we had last night wasn't just last night. I enjoyed it. More than that, you make me smile. You make me feel alive. I haven't felt like this since forever. Only you have that power over me. Will you be my girlfriend?" Naledi searched his face, trying to read the truth beneath the armor. "Are you sure this isn't just because of last night?" Her voice trembled with honest confusion. Jae-sung's gaze hardened with earnestness. "Never. I'm not someone who says things lightly. If it would convince you, I could marry you now." The words landed with surprising gravity. It wasn't a joke, and the room hummed with the weight of it. Naledi laughed then, a small, shocked sound, her fingers covering her mouth as color rose in her cheeks. "Oh no, let's take it slowly," she said, trying to steady her voice. He leaned forward, a crooked smile teasing the corners of his mouth. "Is that a yes?" She bit her lower lip, thinking of the chaos behind her, Tae-hyun, the betrayal, the mess of her heart, and of the quietness she felt with Jae-sung. "Maybe," she whispered. "Come on, Naledi." His tone was coaxing, patient. She let out a breath and folded in on herself a little, then looked at him with a shy, crooked grin. "Okay, I'll be your girlfriend." Something like relief and triumph flashed across his face. He gathered her into his arms with a grip that was equal parts possessive and adoring, pressing small, reverent kisses along her jaw and the inside of her arm. Naledi laughed, surrendering to the warmth that bloomed between them. An hour later, hand in hand, they stepped out, his coat over her shoulders, her hair still tousled from sleep as he drove them toward a quiet cafe to steal breakfast together. They had only reached the villa's front steps when a figure blocked their path. Tae-hyun stood on the doorstep, Naledi. It was not a greeting. Tae-hyun's eyes blazed as he stared at their intertwined fingers. "So this is why you left me? Because of this rich syndicate lord?" Naledi's lips tightened, irritation flashing across her face. "No, Tae-hyun, I left you because you tried to force yourself on me." Jae-sung turned sharply to her, disbelief darkening into fury. "He did that?" His voice was low, dangerous. Naledi nodded firmly. "I warned you, Tae-hyun. I told you if you ever came near me again, I would call the police. Wasn't that clear enough?" Tae-hyun's expression faltered, his tone softening. "I'm sorry, Naledi. Please, let's go home." But when she turned away, his voice rose into a frantic shout, echoing against the villa walls. "She's mine! Naledi belongs to me!" The scene erupted. Jae-sung's glare cut sharper than a knife. "Take him away," he ordered coldly. Two men appeared instantly, seizing Tae-hyun by the arms. He fought back, his cries desperate, raw. "Naledi! Naledi! I love you! Don't leave me for him!" Naledi froze, her heart pounding as his voice grew distant. Dragged away into the morning air, Jae-sung squeezed her trembling hand, pulling her close. "You're safe with me," he said firmly. Though his jaw was tight with barely contained rage, Tae-hyun's screams faded into the distance as Jae-sung's men dragged him away. But the echo still clung to Naledi's heart like smoke. She let out a shaky breath, her hand still trembling in Jae-sung's grasp. "Don't listen to him," Jae-sung said firmly, his voice softer now, protective. "You don't belong to anyone, not even to me. You're free to walk away, Naledi." She turned to him, her eyes wide. "Why would you say that?" He searched her face, his usually cold gaze vulnerable for once. "Because I know what it feels like to be trapped, to have no choice. I would rather lose you than see you feel caged by me." Naledi's chest tightened. In that moment, she realized this wasn't the ruthless syndicate lord everyone feared. It was just a man, scarred and lonely, finally letting his heart breathe again. She stepped closer, their foreheads nearly touching. "But what if I don't want to walk away? What if I choose you?" For the first time in years, Jae-sung's lips curved into a real smile, small but genuine. He kissed her hand gently, not out of desire, but reverence. "Then you'll never walk alone again." Weeks later, in her new office, sunlight streaming through the wide windows, Naledi looked up from her desk to find Jae-sung leaning on the doorway, watching her. No guards, no shadows, just him. "Why are you smiling like that?" she teased. "Because," he said, stepping in and pulling her into his arms, "I never thought I'd find peace again, and it came to me in the form of a stubborn translator who can't dance to save her life." Naledi laughed, hitting his chest lightly. "Shut up. You love my dancing." "I love everything about you." Their lips met, not in urgency, but in the slow, deep kiss of two people who had finally found where they belonged. Outside, the world whispered rumors about the syndicate lord who had fallen for an ordinary woman. But inside that office, it was simple, two hearts, scarred and mended, promising forever in silence. But peace in the underworld never lasts long. 3 months into their relationship, Naledi sat in Jae-sung's penthouse, scrolling through her phone while he worked late. A notification popped up, a message from an unknown number. She opened it. Her blood ran cold. It was a photo of her, taken yesterday, outside the headquarters, and beneath it, a single line in Korean. "He took everything from me. Now I'll take everything from him, starting with you." Her hands trembled as the phone slipped from her grasp. The screen shattered against the marble floor, but the image remained burned in her mind. Someone was watching her. Someone wanted revenge. And Naledi had just become the target. What happens when love becomes a weapon? When the past refuses to stay buried? And when the one person you die for becomes the reason someone wants you dead? The game has just begun. And in Seoul's underworld, nobody plays fair. If this story grabbed your heart and won't let go, subscribe now because part 2 drops soon. And trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. Hit that like button if you're Team Naledi and Jae-sung, and drop a comment telling me, do you think their love can survive what's coming? Between Seoul's quiet nights and Africa's golden skies, some love stories are worth fighting for. Some are worth dying for. See you in part 2.